You know that feeling of being totally in love with something while simultaneously hating it? I know I do, so allow me to introduce you to the Alfa Romeo of TVs. Sold in limited quantities, this flagship ULED TV for 2023 from Hisense, the 85UX, was designed with one mission in mind: to embarrass the competition. Featuring 20,000 individual mini LED lights grouped into 5,000 local dimming zones, the 85UX boasts a peak brightness of 2,500 nits, with a reported contrast ratio of 150,000 to 1. The backlighting, along with its video processing, is controlled by Hisense's new HiView Engine X. The 85UX is a native 4K display that supports HDR, including Dolby Vision. Speaking of Dolby, there's also support for Dolby Atmos, either using the TV's built-in 4.1.2 speaker system or through the eARC-enabled HDMI port. Speaking of HDMI, there are 4 total inputs, 2 of which support signals up to 4K 120, making them, in theory, ideal for next-gen gaming consoles. Gaming features include support for ALLM, VRR, AMD FreeSync, as well as Game Mode Pro. Music fans can stream music and movies using the built-in apps that come with the UX operating system of choice, which is Google TV. For a deeper look into this TV's specs, please check out the link in the description. The first thing that I noticed about the 85UX was just how substantial this TV is. It's a big, thick, heavy TV. While the rest of the TV world is on a diet, Hisense has gone a different route and bulked up. The UX is very well built. The bulk of its girth results from the 7 large built-in speakers that include a dedicated subwoofer. While I don't typically like the sound of built-in TV speakers, the speakers inside the Hisense are actually pretty good, if not a little bit better than some cheaper soundbars. As far as premium TVs go, the 85UX looks and feels it. Now, the Hisense took the place of our reference Sony X95L, and like the Sony, was tested with a variety of components that included our Apple TV 4K, Yamaha 1000A, Emotiva MR1L receiver, Marantz Stereo 70, Sonos Arc, Bose Smart Ultra soundbar, as well as the PS5, all with varying degrees of success, which we're going to get to in just a minute. Now, getting the TV up and running using our existing Google Home account was simple and no different than any other Google TV-enabled display that we've used before, which includes our reference Sony. After connecting the TV to our network and installing all of our favorite apps, 2 things became apparent. This TV is very bright and contrasty. Both the Theater Day and Filmmaker picture profiles are also accurate out of the box. Now, the TV ships in its standard picture profile, which I don't recommend you use. Is it bright? Yeah. Is it accurate? No. Switching to the Theater Day mode and putting the white balance setting on Warm 1 produced results that rose to the standard of calibrated right out of the box. In fact, without any adjustments, the 85UX in its Theater Day mode is good enough to rank among the top 5 most accurate TVs we've ever had on this channel, arguably better than our reference X95L. Now, both grayscale and color accuracy measured exceptionally well, with delta E's hovering around 2. Keep in mind, anything below 3 isn't perceivable to the naked eye, so therefore it's going to be considered calibrated. So we're already off to a pretty great start. And this TV's light output is even more impressive. While Theater Day isn't the TV's brightest profile, real-world brightness hovered between 900 to 1,000 nits. That's incredible, especially when you consider that the Sony's maximum light output is roughly 1,000 nits. Never mind its day-to-day brightness is closer to 500. The Hisense hits 1,000 nits without even breaking a sweat and can actually get brighter. I don't know the exact procedures and conditions Hisense achieved its reported peak brightness of 2,500 nits, but based on my tests, I don't question their numbers. Nevertheless, you're never going to watch anything at 2,000 plus nits, but it's nice to know that if you need to crank things up to, say, battle a bright room or take full advantage of HDR programming, I'm looking at you, Dolby Vision, the UX can absolutely throw down. There's one more aspect of this TV's performance that proved to be class-leading, and that was the presence of true black. The 85UX looks more like an OLED than any other LED-based display I've seen. With the right backlight and dynamic contrast settings, blooming is non-existent. It's so good, in fact, that I'd bet money that even the biggest OLED fanboy couldn't tell the 85UX from an OLED of equal size and calibration. And keep in mind, this is still out of the box, because post-calibration, the only TV that has put up better numbers is LG's C2 OLED. And if you value brightness, the Hisense is technically better. As great as the picture quality is, living with this TV day to day made me want to pull my hair out. For starters, the new processor obviously has to do a lot of heavy lifting, and I think it's being asked to do too much. Not only is it slow to power on and slow to respond to remote commands, its scaling performance is not great. Now, if you feed this TV a 4K signal, even a streaming one, you have little to complain about. But anything less than 4K will expose its processing, scaling, and motion deficiencies. I routinely observed color banding, excessive noise, poor edge fidelity, and stuttering when watching lesser signals such as HD, SD, and broadcast content. Content that our Sony simply doesn't struggle with. But the worst offense has to be motion. As I said, 4K 30 and 4K 60 cinematic content was always buttery smooth, but HD, SD, or broadcast content, especially sports, routinely stuttered. Not even 4K sports broadcasts like the World Series were exempt, and this just resulted in just a maddening experience. You would think, given the TV's native 120 Hz refresh rate, that a lowly 60 Hz signal would be no problem, but this just wasn't the case. This is one of the worst TVs I've encountered for sports, and sadly gaming too, at least when it comes to motion. So speaking of gaming, even with its gaming aids turned on, the Hisense, it struggled. Even turning off VRR and sticking with lower frame rate games like The Last of Us, this TV just couldn't keep up. And adding to my frustration, the Hisense often has a mind of its own when it comes to HDMI. Its HDMI CEC and eARC compatibility was flawless with our Emotiva MR1L receiver, which is something I still can't believe, but was hit or miss with the new Bose Smart Ultra soundbar and was absolutely abysmal to outright non-functioning at times with the Marantz Stereo 70 and Sonos Arc. I troubleshooted every aspect of the signal chain, and at every turn, the TV proved to be the problem, often resulting in needing a factory reset or full power down just to get certain components to work. As much as I love HDMI, and I find its implementation to be mostly flawless on 99% of the products we test, the Hisense is one of those products that just gives HDMI a bad name. Its temperamental nature makes it unpredictable, and it is the biggest reason why I would urge potential customers caution. Comparing the Hisense to other TVs, it's not easy and definitely isn't cut and dry. On the one hand, based on its 4K and 4K HDR image quality, the Hisense is excellent, actually better than the best mini LED TVs on the market right now. If you put a premium on brightness, it's even better than some of the best OLEDs. But it is so inconsistent or performs badly everywhere else that I can't in good conscience recommend this TV. Unless something changes or quality control improves, I think you're likely better off going with, say, the Sony X95L, LG OLED, or a comparable Samsung. And that absolutely sucks because the Hisense is capable of true greatness. I mean, there were sequences in Baz Luhrmann's Elvis that have never, and I mean never, looked as good as they did through the UX. But as soon as the movie ended and it was time to watch Saturday Football or the news, the Hisense put my love for it to the absolute test. So to wrap it up, I'm in awe of what Hisense has done with their flagship 85UX. Its image quality and light control, it's awesome. I'm also at a complete loss over how the rest of the user experience could be so bad. This is one of the best TVs I've ever seen, but it is also one of the worst TVs I have ever lived with. So just like my Alfa Romeo, the Hisense won't be sticking around, which is a shame because there's still so much I love about it. So that's what I think of the Hisense 85UX. What do you think?
I mean, I'm just as stumped as you.
Yeah.
Because this TV looks shockingly good. I mean, it looks like an OLED to me.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it looks better than some of the OLEDs we have in house and that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
The colors are fantastic.
So good.
The black levels are insane. The internal speakers even, I thought were actually pretty good. All of that makes all of the negative issues we experience feel almost criminal. Like Hisense was so close to having perhaps the best TV we've had this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so disappointing.
Yeah.
For those of you who are still considering this TV, I think if you're not one who follows sports, the motion issues likely won't bug you as long as you pay for 4K signals everywhere else, like Netflix and you know how there's typically tiers of, signal quality.
Correct.
I think that you could perhaps overlook some of the motion issues.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning before we sat down to record. I'm like, who might benefit from this TV, all things considered?
Yeah.
And the only time I think that I would say go ahead and consider, I'm not saying automatic buy. Yeah. Like Sony X95L still gets like automatic buy. It works. Consider this TV, especially because you know you need the brightness and all of that, and you want it calibrated out of the box.
You don't want to calibrate it.
But it comes calibrated from the
Yeah.
factory, so you don't want to have to mess with calibration. Consider the Hisense if you are a physical media aficionado, you have a Blu-ray player and you watch everything on a disc, or you have a higher end movie server like a Kaleidoscape or something like that that's going to feed it a dedicated signal as if it had a disc.
The reality is the HDMI issues, talking about the CEC and the EARC problems,
Yeah.
are going to be so problematic that is really the biggest reason I could say this just isn't quite ready.
Yeah.
Because most people are going to use some sort of receiver or a sound bar. I feel that if somebody is buying an 85-inch television, they are also concerned about having a better sound
Yeah.
than just what's coming out
Yeah,
of
they're
this
putting
TV
it
speakers.
as part of-
So with all of the issues like we mentioned, like Andrew mentioned in his part of the review, that's just such a pain. Like to the fact that I know you had to just go through every little point in the system to try to troubleshoot, okay,
Yeah.
where's the breakdown happening? And as a customer,
No one's going to do that.
When you're spending $4,000 on a television,
Yeah.
it's an expensive TV for Hisense.
Yeah.
And
And keep in mind, this is not an issue. There's two things I do want to bring up about the HDMI compatibility. This is not an issue of, like, say, the Sony X95L, where you go into the menus and you set digital audio from auto to setting 1, setting 2, setting 3. This isn't that. This is straight up, a product will work with it. Like the Sonos Arc will work with it on Monday. You'll power down, go to bed, come back on Tuesday, turn the TV on, and now suddenly it doesn't work. And then you're force restarting the TV, you're unplugging it, you're doing all the little tricks to try and get it to work. And after about the second or third restart, it just suddenly works again. You didn't change any settings, you didn't do anything different. That's what I mean when I say that this TV is just hyper temperamental. Because it'd be one thing if I could sit there and say, hey, you're not going to change gear like I am, so it's like once your receiver works, it just works. And in that case, I would say, make sure your stuff works and then enjoy it. But even when I would get something to work, it wouldn't work for an entire week.
so this leads me to something I am anticipating we're going to get asked in the comments.
Okay.
Could we have a bad unit?
Could we have a bad unit? I mean, that is always a possibility. I'm not going to lie and say there's no way that, it's not possible. It's always a possibility. Now, we're in a fortunate and an unfortunate position. Fortunate in that Hisense sent this to us for the purposes of a review, and that's great. And it's very helpful.
Because it's been a while.
It's been a while since Hisense has been on the channel, and we're typically really big fans and have advocated for their products. What the downside of that is that because this TV is in limited quantities, meaning I don't know if it's a small batch TV or what, but I have noticed that it goes in and out of stock quite frequently. This was actually very hard to get our hands on. So the likelihood of getting a second or third sample to confirm that it is in fact not malfunctioning is likely not going to happen. So I do have to put a giant asterisk on this. The reason why I don't think it's malfunctioning, though, is because we tested it with so many components and so many different HDMI cables, and we tested it against two other TVs that we have in-house of equal quality, budget, and all of this that work with all of the things.
All of the components.
All of the components and the cables that I also used with this. And the fact that it worked for 3 days at a stretch, then wouldn't work for like 15 minutes, and then doing power down cycles or whatever would work again for the rest of the day, but then the next day be pretty much non-functioning, tells me that there's probably a bug in the software, and it's not necessarily that the hardware is failing, because the hardware always recognized itself. It just didn't always send the signal, and vice versa. And that's software, I think. That's not hardware. And obviously we had no issues with the image, the screen, like colors were accurate. It responded to calibration. The backlighting worked as advertised. The CMS controls worked as advertised. The apps all functioned. Google TV operating system, while not quite as snappy as our Sony, still functioned well. This will run, if not just embarrass the Sony on a lot of levels. It really will. I just don't know if it's a good investment at the exact same price, given the potential that you could run into the exact same problems we did.
Right. And we did reach out to Hisense.
Yes.
And let them know about the issues we ran into.
Yes.
We're still waiting as of right now for a response. I believe the last we heard is that they were
looking into
trying to replicate some of the issues.
We're definitely going to attempt to hang on to this TV at least until we hear back from Hisense, because maybe they do a firmware update or whatever. And if that happens, I'll plug it in, we'll do the whole smash, and we'll at least do a community post, or I'll leave a really lengthy comment in the description letting you know, like, hey guys, it's good. Because honestly, if they fix the HDMI issues, the CEC, EARC problems, and motion, if they're able to fix those things, I have no problems recommending this television, because the picture quality is insane. It's beyond reproach.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good.
Yeah.
But I am really impressed otherwise, and I hope that they can tweak whatever things are going on here and maybe continue to improve on the platform.
Oh, yeah.
Because, wow, they could come in and start really slaying some of the competition.
Absolutely.
And that is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was just a quick rundown on panel uniformity and the dirty screen effect. I recall you saying, just when we've been sitting around watching this, that those things were really good.
Yeah, a complete non-issue. 100% white pattern, edge to edge, resulted in virtually no dirty screen effect, and actually resulted in almost zero vignetting at the borders of the TV. It actually did better than our Sony X95L by a perceivable margin. Blooming is a little bit better with this TV, just has so many more zones, so much better control over those zones. It is OLED-like, and I was comparing it to last year's Sony OLED that we have in our bedroom. Granted, it's not an 85-inch, but I was just looking at subtitles, and I was just looking at patterns between the two TVs, and this is every bit it's equal in that blooming department.
So obviously, as you can see, this is a very hard product to review. It isn't cut and dry, because there are a lot of things it is just amazing at.
Yep.
So close.
Yeah,
it was so close.
It's simultaneously
freaking great.
Yeah, it's simultaneously, like I think I said in the review, simultaneously occupies best of status while being one of the worst in certain categories.
Like your Alpha.
Yeah, like oh my God, I love that car. I love that car, but I was relieved the day it left. It hurt me. All right, guys, that's now our review of Hisense's flagship 85UX TV. I know it's probably not what you were expecting, but I gotta know, what do you think? What do you think? Is this something that you would take a chance on, or are we gonna wait for Gen 2 and hope that all the gremlins get worked out? sound off in the description below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Go ahead, ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links Christy left for you down below, it's a great way that you've continued to show your support for the work that we do here, and we just thank you for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and that's it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Happy watching. This was a TV review. We will see you next Sunday for a brand new video, and thanks again for watching. Bye.